Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses who are coming today. I'm glad that we're holding the second hearing this year on Sudan to bring attention to the ongoing catastrophe. It's been over 2.5 years since the outbreak of war in Sudan. It is now the largest humanitarian internal displacement and food crisis in the world. Nearly 30 million people, 2/3 of Sudan's population, are in dire need of humanitarian assistance, and over 19 million people are facing acute hunger. Famine, which is entirely man-made, is confirmed in El Fasher and Kadugli. More than 13 million Sudanese have been displaced from their homes since the conflict began, including nearly 4 million people forced to flee across Sudan's borders as refugees. And I've seen this firsthand when I traveled to Chad and met with Sudanese refugees last year. Let's be clear. This is a war of choice. The Rapid Support Forces, the Sudanese Armed Forces, and allied militias have waged this war, committing war crimes and holding the Sudanese people captive for their own selfish interests. SAF continues to indiscriminately bomb civilians, while the RSF inflicts the second genocide in 20 years in Darfur. And their external backers, particularly the UAE with their support to the RSF, in addition to Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Russia, have turned this war into a regional proxy war by supporting and arming either side, risking further regional destabilization. The crisis has deepened over the past 2 months as the RSF overtook El Fasher, and the world only knew from the satellite images that showed destroyed neighborhoods, blood-soaked grounds, and mass graves. Children have fled El Fasher without their parents, and reports include accounts of widespread slaughter and rape by the RSF. But the real tragedy is that the international community saw this coming, and now experts are predicting the same fate in South Kordofan. So I welcome President Trump's newfound and long overdue attention to this crisis after months of neglect. However, I'm concerned that many of the administration's actions have not only set themselves up to fail, but also worsened the suffering of the Sudanese people. Earlier this year, Secretary Rubio cut millions of dollars in assistance to Sudan as part of President Trump's sham foreign assistance review and illegal dismantling of USAID. For example, USAID was previously supporting the heroic efforts of the Sudanese emergency response rooms to open community kitchens and provide basic meals to Sudanese civilians throughout the country. These kitchens are uniquely situated to assist communities cheaper and faster than traditional NGOs, which is why the Biden administration started funding them. But the Trump administration cut all funding for these kitchens, forcing nearly 80% of all ERR activities to stop and affecting over 1,460 community kitchens operating across Sudan, cutting off vulnerable Sudanese civilians from life-saving food assistance. Today, nearly 250 kitchens remain closed, and 315 kitchens can only provide one meal a day. And that is just one example of the administration's counterproductive actions. The Trump administration shut down the Conflict and Stabilization Operations Bureau, which had critical conflict expertise in Sudan that could have supported the administration's peace efforts. And President Trump has failed to name senior positions to lead Africa policy. Almost a year into the administration, there is no nominated person to be Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of African Affairs at the State Department. He has not only failed to appoint an NSC Senior Director for Africa, but has actually combined the Africa and Middle East Directorate, and he has so far refused to nominate a special envoy for Sudan that is required by law. I would sincerely like to believe that the president's peace agenda is real and will result in real peace. But it's hard to believe that when he has at every turn gutted our foreign policy institutions and neglected to dedicate the necessary staff and resources to make peace not just possible, but enduring. Meanwhile, the Sudanese people don't have time to wait. We need immediate action to hold external backers of the RSF and SAF accountable for their crimes and lack of commitment to a ceasefire. The UAE, for example, is the main backer of the RSF and has made it possible for its genocide to take place. At this point, we've all seen the widespread and credible reporting detailing the UAE's funneling of weapons to the RSF and their efforts to hide it. But instead of using the U.S.'s significant leverage to pressure the UAE to stop arming the RSF, the Trump administration blew through Ranking Member Meek's congressional hold in May and approved a $1 billion arms sale. And to be clear, this criticism is not specific to this administration. I was also critical of the Biden administration's unwillingness to hold the UAE accountable. I believe that the United States needs to use its significant leverage with the UAE to pressure them to finally end their support to the RSF. That's why I've introduced the Stand Up for Sudan Act that would do just that, and why I've joined with Ranking Member Meeks as a co-lead of the U.S. engagement in Sudanese Peace Act, which would cut off arms to any country sending weapons to the RSF or the SAF. And there are so many more meaningful actions this administration can take. For example, despite the deteriorating humanitarian situation across the country, the State Department has not yet set up a disaster assistance response team, commonly known as a DART, to address the crisis. I urge the administration to do this immediately. And while I was glad to see new sanctions designations on Colombian mercenaries that are fighting for the RSF, they do not designate any of the Emirati entities that are funding this scheme, including the Global Security Services Group. I urge the administration to name and sanction these entities. If President Trump is serious about the peace agenda in Sudan, he should reverse the damage that has been done to our critical programs and institutions, invest the necessary resources and staffing, and take tangible actions to help end the war in Sudan and secure a sustainable peace agreement that ends military rule, establishes a civilian government, and provides a clear roadmap to democratic elections. The Sudanese people have suffered enough. It's time for the United States and the international community to step up and focus on bringing an end to this war so the Sudanese people can finally rebuild their country. So I look forward to hearing from Deputy Assistant Secretary Spera on the State Department's plan to realize the President's interest in peace in Sudan, and from our expert panel to hear their recommendations. Thank you, Chairman Smith. I yield back.